If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. You are listening to the Maura Murray series. This is episode 47, Silent UMass 4. And we are going to be diving into a series of mysteries at UMass still unresolved in the Maura Murray case, which could be one of the most famous missing persons cases in the state of Massachusetts. I'm flying solo tonight, actually requested that I do this podcast solo. Didn't see that coming. If you're not a patron, you can become a patron at our Patreon. Just check the link in the description. And you can request podcasters or lack of podcasters on the podcast. As always, if you'd like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. You can also check us out on Twitter, Reddit, and Facebook. Make sure to like and follow our Facebook for exclusive content. Any questions, comments, theories, rebuttals, leave them in the comments section. So let's jump in right here. What's strange about this case, which again, any logical individuals can do a compare and contrast with other missing persons cases to see what the standard operating procedure is in missing persons cases. Usually, you'll get an ATM still or security footage right away. Not 13 years later, when it wouldn't help if someone is missing and possibly endangered in the 48 hours after the disappearance. I mean, every hour is critical. So if someone could have seen her having that ATM still released and on all the missing persons posters, that would have been helpful. That would have been helpful. And that is what happens in certain cases. Also on the news, they have the last known image. So we still don't have the Lickers 44 security footage, which is strange because it said that she's alone, but we're supposed to take it on blind faith as gospel truth. Does that sound logical or scientific to anybody? And yet the narrative steers maintain that a nothing to see here attitude, and they don't even want to look at UMass, which is very, very strange. The truth is not afraid of investigation, so why not explore all avenues? Because this might be one of the biggest missing persons cases in the state of Massachusetts. Because if Maura never left Massachusetts, this is a Massachusetts missing persons case. So how does one go about proving this? So instead of assuming and pretending that assumptions are facts and that Maura ended up at the weather-barred corner just because a human said so, I mean, I don't know if this is really that much of a reality check, but humans can be mistaken or lie for a series of reasons, either intimidation, being paid off, whatever the case may be. So hearsay is not really that trustworthy. These are the words of humans. Humans are not infallible and morally pristine 100% of the time, and to expect them to be is quite silly. So all of this faith is put into Butch Atwood's account, and the Westman's report on the man smoking a cigarette or whatever figure at the car, that's all completely disregarded. Completely disregarded. So, but for whatever reason, Butch Atwood, he is this metric of infallibility in the Maura Murray case. I mean, this stuff's unbelievable. So anyway, let's go into the campus security footage. Because, okay, we're talking UMass, one of the largest campuses in the United States, if not the world, nicknamed Zoomass because the place is a zoo. And we are to believe that there are no security cameras at this university in 2004. I mean, we're not talking the 80s here or the early 90s. We're talking 2004. So let's go digging for clues. So let's trace back when Maura was actually last seen. Because, again, the narrative steers don't want to touch timelines of any kind. But, I mean, in Investigation 101, you establish a timeline. I mean, that's just what you do. This is just the very, very basics of logic and investigation. I don't know why anybody would not want to do this, advocate against it, or think it was completely above board to not do it. Or to just buy whatever facets of it on nothing but blind faith and then continue building a house of cards of fallacies and then try to solve the case. Unless they're not really trying to solve the case, then it does explain why someone would want to do that, to obfuscate. Anyway, we've gone over the whitewash interviews and the whitewash reports. I'm going to start with part 4 of the whitewash information right here. Campus security had evidence that she was last seen Sunday morning by a fellow student and that she was carrying a backpack, box of wine, and a large hockey bag of beer. Very interesting. So this was told to whitewash by law enforcement, allegedly. This was for an article that actually supposedly never ran or never got published. I wonder why. A lot of weird stuff here, and comparing all this information, which seems to be contradictory. Now, is it simply a typo, a mistake, that it says that she was last seen Sunday morning? Is that a mistake? Allegedly, she spoke to Fred on Sunday night, and she spoke to Bill early Sunday morning on her father's cell phone. This is the information that has been provided to us. And phone records corroborates. However, that phone records would not, unless you have the actual recording and it's her voice, again, we got to it's difficult to 100% verify that. But it seems reasonable to assume that they wouldn't necessarily lie about that, especially when they know that the phone records could prove it, especially early on, unless this is a far more elaborate conspiracy than anyone has theorized. But there's no reason to go down that rabbit hole as of yet, unless more evidence is presented for that. But anyway, how did law enforcement know this? So again, if there is security footage of Maura with a backpack, box of wine, hockey bag of beer, or whatever, cans. Some other people said it was a garbage bag full of cans and bottles that she was going to trade in for cash at the liquor store, which someone did according to the receipt. We don't know if it was her because the liquor store footage hasn't been released. Come on, it's one of the biggest missing persons cases in the state of Massachusetts. You need to be releasing the footage. This is bizarre. So, of course, Sunday morning, she was at her father's motel following the Hadley accident. So she wasn't on campus Sunday morning. So either this is a typo or law enforcement told whitewash the wrong information. They couldn't even get the facts straight. Again, nothing new here. We don't even know what the facts are. Other criticizers of this whitewash account have mentioned this. So a fellow student, so we don't have a name, we have not corroborated their identity. There's no information that anybody corroborated this. So was this just an anonymous tip that was left somewhere or told to Bill or Kate or Sarah and they relate it like second, third, fourth degree hearsay? We really don't know. But how did they know what the hockey bag was full of? So if it was a hockey bag full of beer, so they could see through the bag? Or did this student was involved with Maura and in some capacity, did they party together? Did they know that it was full of beer? There's a lot of unanswered questions here, but let's move forward. So did the liquor store receipt add up to how many bottles and cans was it? It would have had to have been a decent number. Now, there was a comment by UMass police stating, "We can't comment on the last known person to see Maura that day." That's interesting. Is that because they don't know or because they never corroborated this individual who said they saw Maura? Now, maybe this individual wasn't lying. Maybe they saw someone who looked like Maura. Out of all the people on UMass, I'm sure from a distance, like across a parking lot or in a crowd, whatever, there's probably a decent amount of people that look like Maura from a distance, maybe in profile, whatnot, wear similar clothes. That's not unreasonable to think. So according to fact sheets, there was somewhere between 14 and 20,000 students at UMass, so that's a lot of people. Looks like roughly half female in 2004. So let's look at the security footage issue. So this is an article from September 6th, 2006 by Anna Dolianitis, Collegian staff, the Massachusetts Daily Collegian. Smile, you're on campus camera. A new set of eyes will be watching when students enter and exit all dormitories at the University of Massachusetts this fall. The installation of approximately 325 new security cameras, which will cover all 45 residence halls on campus, will be completed for the start of the semester, according to UMass Chancellor John Lombardi. Events from the past, the present, and those we anticipate in the future all indicate that university campuses are subject to the same kind of security issues as large residential populations in cities and towns across the nation, said Lombardi. Periodic events that result in loss of property or disturbances of one kind or another in residence halls remind us of our obligation to continue to improve our security systems. Cameras already exist in resident halls on campus, with the few exceptions being Brooks, Chadburn, Crabtree, Greenough, Hamlin, Johnson, Knowlton, Leach, Thatcher, and Wheeler. And those are the exceptions. Those are the exceptions. So Maura's dorm was Kennedy, not listed as the exception. Her workstation was Melville, not listed as the exception. So that would mean that cameras were already at those dorms and other dorms, except for the few that were listed here. Okay. The planning of the new security measures began in 2000, when David Scott, the chancellor at the time, suggested the installation of security cameras in the southwest residential area courtyards in order to deal effectively with potentially dangerous student behavior, according to Ed Blaguzewski, director of the UMass News Office. The UMass Police Department and UMass Housing Services worked collaboratively to make decisions and coordinate the plan. The security cameras are focused on doorways, lobbies, and areas of high student congregation, said Blaguzewski, emphasizing that the cameras are for security, not surveillance. Police use the cameras to gather evidence, not to watch students 24/7. They're not tracking the students' habits across campus. They don't have the interest, time, or personnel for that. Interesting that he went out of his way to say that. The UMPD uses its website, umass.edu/UMPD, to show clips of security camera footage in an effort to obtain information from students who may have seen the suspects. Does it really? Not in Maura's case. In the past, the cameras have been the key for the UMPD to charge lawbreakers. I was really happy that they had the cameras on campus. I never really thought about how useful they could be until I became a victim, said Cassandra Klimkutz. During finals week of last semester, Klimkutz and her neighbor in the field residence hall in Orchard Hill were victims of vandalism to their dorm rooms. Dining commons, compost, worms, and who knows what else was thrown at our doors and our rooms, and were ruined to the point we couldn't even live there for the rest of the year, said Klimkutz. After the event, we had no leads and there were no witnesses to help identify possible suspects, but the cops were able to access security cameras in the entrance of my dorm, as well as the other dorms in the area, and from that they were able to eventually identify who the vandals were, said Klimkutz. And yet no evidence of Maura on campus that Monday. Very interested. Or even in the days prior that had ever been released. One of the students responsible was later charged with malicious destruction of property and was ordered to pay fines, while the other two students were not charged, according to Klimkutz. I would definitely feel much safer with the cameras on campus, and I never thought I would say that, because I am sure that before this incident I would always say that they were a complete invasion of privacy, said Klimkutz. In September 2005, a suspicious man was seen entering a dorm room in the Van Meter Residence Hall in the central residence area, and the UMPD asked students to call the confidential police tip line with any information on the man. Earlier, in 2005, security cameras observed an armed robbery in the same residence hall. However, the robbers left when an alarm sounded. Yeah, UMass does not sound like a safe place. The increase in security comes following a report released by ABC Primetime News last November, which declared that UMass had the highest violent crime rate of any school in the nation equal to its size. This assertion outraged UMass officials, drawing criticisms of being inaccurate and badly flawed in its methodology from a November 2005 press release from the UMass News Office. That sounds pretty accurate when referring to the Maura Murray case and all of the information not available of what's going on at UMass and if she ever even left UMass or Massachusetts. ABC News used outdated data to calculate its rating of campus crime, ignoring 2004 data that showed a reduction in violent crime of more than 50% at UMass Amherst. ABC News is using only 2002 and 2003 data, although Clary report information for 2004 was due at the Department of Education by October 1st, 2005, said Blackgusowski. I don't know if anybody fact-checked that. Okay, the federal Jean Clary Disclosure of Campus Security Policy and Campus Crime Statistics Act requires colleges and universities across the United States to disclose information about crime on and around their campuses, according to the UMPD website. You know, another thing that's not really talked about in the Maura Murray case and some other cases, if a UMPD cadet or some other UMPD officer, or high-ranking or not, if they were involved in some kind of kidnapping, crime, accidental death, intentional murder, who knows, that would look really, really bad on the UMPD, the school as a whole. Is there enough incentive to cover that up, particularly when there's all this other weird stuff going on? Like if there was a CI situation, if they knew about some kind of drug running at Domino's or whatnot, and they know Saturn, like Saturns were the number one used drug running vehicle and one of the top stolen vehicles that year. So why not just get, I mean, that seems like an easier situation to clean up than another type of situation, accidental death or not, if she OD'd at a party or whatever the situation was, particularly if it was the fault of this UMPD cadet or officer. Now, that's if they're the bad guy. They could be the good guy, but they could also be running up against a lot of corruption. And, you know, if their lives were threatened, if their life was threatened, their family's lives were threatened, would they do the right thing and disclose Maura's demise if that's what it was? I mean, nobody really knows until they're in that situation, right? The statistics from the Clary Act break crime into 4 categories: crimes occurring on campus, inside resident halls, on campus property, and on public property. Furthermore, the statistics show the type of crime ranging from violent crimes such as murder and sex offense to non-confrontational crimes such as drug and alcohol violation and burglary. According to the UMPD Clary Act statistics, violent crime in on-campus resident halls has shown a downward trend from 2002 to 2004. Robbery, for example, has decreased from 5 reported incidents in 2002 to 3 in 2004. Not the greatest difference. Likewise, cases of aggravated assault have decreased from 9 to 4. That's better. And forcible sex offenses from 23 to 6. Okay, that's a pretty good change since 2002. The Act also specifies arrest statistics, which have climbed in residence halls from 41 to 91 from 2002 to 2004. All right. Although the cameras will provide additional security on campus, the resident hall monitoring security system will continue to exist in its present form. Our job is to monitor who goes in and out of the building, said UMass junior Brittany Smith, who has been a security monitor since her freshman year. Same job as Maura Murray. If there is an altercation, we call for either an RA or security to check it out. If some type of vandalism or theft takes place, it's easier to look up who signed that person in that fits the description. Additional campus security measures include the K-9 unit, which began in 2003. The Police Cadet Program is another program in which police cadets provide an early detection system for suspicious behavior and potential crime on campus. And various programs such as fare-free bus service and a 14-hour rape aggression defense program offered each semester, according to Blaguszewski. There are walking escorts that not many people know about. You can call 545-2123, ask for an escort from anywhere on campus, added Smith. Lombardi said the existence of the camera does not invade the privacy of students. Security cameras are everywhere, said Lombardi. When we go to an ATM machine, there's a security camera that takes our picture, although it might not be released for 13 years if you're a missing person. Similar security cameras are located in many other locations throughout our state and nation, and of course, any of us who visit casinos are under constant surveillance all the time. If you are coming and going and not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. The people who are doing wrong things are the ones who don't want it, said Smith. While the security measures will keep an eye on unwanted visitors of dorms, the total cost of the installation is expected to reach $500,000, according to Blaguzewski. Because the security upgrades are within the housing system, these current investments will not have any impact on tuition and academic fees, and the current cost is already included in the housing rates, said Lombardi. All right, so what do we get from that article? There's already security cameras all over the place. They're just adding a whole bunch. So what's interesting is, did the UMass Police Department have no security footage of Maura? So no matter where she walked, like there's no security. I mean, there's got to be security cameras overlooking parking lots and in certain common areas. So obviously they added a whole bunch, but there was already a ton existing. So they had zero footage of Maura. Where's all the footage of Maura? She had to have been around, right? So if this website already used clips of security footage, this UMass EDU UMPD website, why didn't they show footage of Maura on her, the last known footage? Has anybody seen her? Did anybody talk to her? Anybody has any idea what happened? I mean, they really failed Maura in this, because how do you handle a missing persons case like this where there should be all of this existing footage and yet it's just magically not anywhere? Because Maura is supposedly going all over the place. She's going from her dorm, she's returning scrubs, she's going to the liquor store, allegedly trading in these bottles and cans. She's making all of these movements across campus, and there's no footage. In any other case, without narrative steerers, people would be crying foul all over the place. And yet nobody finds any of this suspicious. It's mind-boggling, mind-shocking. I mean, I guess Art and Maggie think it's all on the up and up, so they won't investigate any of that. But it's really bizarre. Look at every single other missing persons case. There's always footage released of their last known movements, even if it was a day or 2 or 3 prior. It's like, this is the last known footage of these missing persons. If you have seen them, please contact authorities. So, I mean, literally every single case. What is up with the Maura Murray case? Let's look at another article here. This is September 2004. So just a couple months after Maura's disappearance. Also from the Daily Collegian. This was written by Erica Lovely, Collegian staff. Southwest receives $200,000 worth of cameras. UMass spends $5 million on summer dorm improvements. University of Massachusetts Southwest residential area has approximately $230,000 worth of new video cameras that are being installed as part of a $5 million capital improvement and residential security effort, according to Director of Housing Michael Gilbert. The sum covers all camera equipment and installation. 130 to 132 cameras will be fully operating in all Southwest residential halls, as well as Baker and Van Meter in Central by September. Most of the cameras were installed over the summer break, and there will soon be cameras in all 41 resident halls on campus. According to Housing Services report, an additional $175,000 from the annual capital funding for security systems is expected to pay for the purchase and installation of cameras into 10 to 13 additional buildings over the next 2 years. The cameras are being seen as a security tool, says Gilbert. Supervising is an important point with security. The cameras are part of our desire to provide a safer community and environment for our student, faculty, staff, and visitors to campus, said Michael Gargano, Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs and Campus Life. Gilbert says the cameras will be used to monitor students exiting and entering the resident halls and encourage them to use the main entrance doors only. Quick point right here. At Melville, where Maura worked security, it was said that there was a back door, another door where people could come and go freely without the security check. So that's all swept under the rug as well by a lot of people, but that's an interesting point, and I'm sure that's not unique to Melville Hall. I mean, if you look at college kids and college campuses, they have a way of getting around rules. That's just what kids that age do. I don't know why anybody would be surprised by this, but some of the narrative steerers just refuse to look at any of that information. The cameras are set up so they will only monitor, and also from this, even this article here, they're basically admitting that encourage them to use the main entrance doors only. So there might be side utility doors and all these other things that could be used that wouldn't necessarily be subject to security scrutiny. The cameras are set up so they will only monitor lobbies, lounges, stairwell doors, perimeter doors, reception desks, and primary entrance doors. There are no cameras pointing at bathroom doors or student rooms. We do not envision that at this point, said Gilbert. We are monitoring public access areas, not residents. For some students, the camera installation has come a bit of a shock. Brian Long, Student Government Association Secretary of University Policy, says that he was never informed that the cameras were being put in place, which was information that he feels the SGA should have been privy to. Anything that housing services is budgeted for is out of funds paid for by students. Long said the SGA should have known. There should have been student input. In my mind, the cameras aren't even preventative because students don't even know they are there, said SGA President Eduardo Bustamante. The cameras were paid for by funds from housing services that are comprised of student housing fees. The project is designed over the period of 2 years, so the housing fee will not increase for students. Long says he has become aware that the administration was planning to install cameras when student David Synott, a senior, discovered a bidding website under the UMass Housing Services homepage in mid-June. The site was complete with pictures of locations where the cameras were to be installed, as well as the angles and areas each camera would monitor. Gilbert believes the site was developed by Jim Mead, coordinator of the student security program, in order to find bids from different vendors for the camera installation. All right. They just basically go on bringing this to the attention of the students for student input. Okay, it's without question that the cameras will deter a certain level of campus endangering activities, said Gargano. He hopes the cameras will be used to record and identify individuals involved in destructive or dangerous behavior when incidents occur. He believes the cameras will not only identify UMass students, but also non-UMass students who cause destruction on campus. If you could chart the activity that could border on criminal-type activity, it is mostly being done by non-UMass students, said Gargano. We will catch them. Cameras are not new to UMass residential areas. Video cameras were installed to monitor the outside of buildings in Southwest in the late 1990s. Years ago, under Chancellor David K. Scott, according to UMass Chief of Police Barbara O'Connor. I believe the cameras have been a success, said O'Connor. You can't measure the amount of crime they've deterred, but they have deterred serious crime and suspects have been identified. So, let's go back to this party. Let's go back to the Saturday night party. Maura Murray, Kate Markopoulos, Sarah Alfieri, leaving with an unidentified male. What does the security footage show? That's interesting. The security footage could prove whether or not there's a party if it's measuring the outside of the halls, right? So if they were leaving with some guy, that could be shown on there. What's going on in the parking lot with the Saturn? Is it even there? Was it even there for a whole week? That would be on the security footage. So now we have corroboration here that cameras were installed in the late 1990s. As in most places, that's what I'm saying. 2004 is not the 90s. Security footage definitely exists. Now, what it shows, we don't know. Just like the liquor store footage exists. Was Maura Murray alone? Was she even there? We don't know. In 2003, there were if you look at some of these crime reports, there were thefts, assaults, all these things. So I'm sure the security cameras were instrumental in identifying the people as they were leaving the building or entering the building, whatnot, with items. I mean, that's what security footage is used for, and yet none of it in the Maura Murray case. Is this all above board? These are all questions that need to be answered. And this issue of security footage, because again, the Saturn keeps coming up. It was cited either that Saturday or the weekend prior in Boston. So if the security footage would exist, it could show whether or not that Saturn was there. Because that might be the key to all of it. What's going on with the Saturn? So here's something that also doesn't get talked about. Fred Murray took Maura off the insurance on the Saturn. Why would he do that? How often was the Saturn being driven? If she's not driving it, he took her off the insurance because there's no plan for her to ever be driving it. And if it's in that bad shape, no one's ever going to drive it. So it's not an option for anybody to drive ever. Unless it was in Fred's mind. in Fred's mind. So someone who doesn't know that it's running that badly and they're borrowing it with or without Maura's permission, does that have something to do with something? Also, we have to go back to the Vassy hit and run. Was the Saturn responsible, or do people think it might have been responsible and then action spiraled out of control because they thought it might have been, even if it wasn't? Is that enough to explain it? Not only the insurance, but let's look at the parking sticker. The sticker that's on the Saturn is a 2003 to 2004 parking sticker. So you get that sticker at the beginning of the year. However, there's a caveat here. From the UMass website, parking is a yearly permit, but they will check for valid license plates, and any cars with evidence of non-use after 14 days may be towed. So that's interesting. So how do they check it? How often do they check it? Obviously, they're not going to randomly be running checks on every vehicle to make sure that more is insured on the vehicle or every single of the thousands of students. But what does evidence of non-use constitute? So how often do they tow cars? So if it's sitting in the same spot covered in snow for months, then would that be evidence of non-use? So I think, did Fred Murray said he took the insurance off the Saturn? Did he do that around mid-January? Because if he did that when he had it towed, because here's the thing, the plot's going to thicken really, really hard right now. The Saturn has no insurance on it. What happens if someone hits Patrick Vassy with a vehicle with no insurance? What's the liability? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly millions if it was non-accidental. I mean, obviously there'd have to be an investigation done, but it was an accidental hit and run. Okay, you wouldn't necessarily, I mean, the charges vary depending on what's going on, whether it was dark, whether or not he jumped in front of them. I mean, we don't know what happened. But without insurance, I mean, if people were going to put all of this in action to avoid some kind of hit and run charge on a vehicle with insurance, what would people do on a vehicle without insurance? Would there be necessarily a plan hatched to get rid of the Saturn? You'd want the Saturn nowhere near campus, right? Because you don't even want anybody suggesting that a vehicle with no insurance was being used, that could even be used in a hit and run. So again, if somebody was borrowing the vehicle and they didn't know that there was no insurance on it, what then? But then Maura knows, Fred knows, nobody would believe. Would they still be liable? Because they didn't report the car stolen. They didn't report, even if it was taken without permission, do they want that mess? So there's a lot of unanswered questions here, regardless of whether or not Maura was the one who used the Saturn. But the security footage from the parking lot would explain all of this. It would explain, you'd even be able to see possibly, I don't know how grainy it would be for the nighttime footage, but if you know the parking spot that it was in prior, the footage from earlier in the day, you might be able to tell if the Saturn was still there during the time of Patrick Vassy's hit and run. And you'd be able to tell if it was still there days later, or if it was never even there. All of this would be answered with footage from the security cameras. Okay, there is plenty more to go over at UMass, with even more unanswered questions on various characters involved in this case, and we will be going over them in the next episode, so stay tuned for further episodes in the podcast. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If you like the podcast, hit that like button and feel free to share it across social media platforms. Any questions, comments, theories, thoughts, leave them in the comments section. You can check us out on Twitter, Reddit, and Patreon. And make sure you like and follow the Facebook page for exclusive content. Just check the links in the description. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.